The Golden Horde was less a glittering beacon of wealth than a boot crashing down on Eastern Europe, Central Asia, and parts of Russia for over 2 centuries. Founded by Batu Khan, the grandson of Genghis Khan, in the mid-13th century, the Horde emerged from the westward expansion of the Mongol Empire. If the Mongol Empire was the original version of move fast and break things, the Golden Horde was its franchise model, except the only thing they were disrupting was cities, populations, and the occasional cathedral roof. Let's start with how this juggernaut functioned. The Golden Horde inherited the ruthless and hyper-efficient military machine developed by Genghis Khan. Their forces were built around a decimal system groups of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000. With the 10,000-strong unit called a tumen, they employed feigned retreats to draw enemies into ambushes, enveloped flanks with coordinated cavalry movements, and generally made a habit of making the enemy regret waking up that morning. It's one of history's biggest what-ifs. What if Batu Hadan T turned back? It became one of the largest cities in the medieval world, bustling with merchants, slaves, and enough political scheming to make Game of Thrones look like an etiquette seminar. From here, the Horde administered a vast tributary empire. Russian princes were forced to kneel, pay tribute, and kiss Mongol boot sand, not even the nice ones. Imagine the Louvre, full of Mongol arrows and Bavarian beer served in yurts. They were also masters of logistics able to feed and maneuver massive armies across hostile terrain, using herds, forage, and a vast network of relay stations. The city, which had started to look a little too smug, was turned into a charred memory. Toktamish challenged him twice first at the Battle of the Kondratkia River in 1391, and then again at the Vorskla River in 1399, where he allied with Lithuanians and lost catastrophically. Timur's revenge was biblical. He sacked Sarai, deported its craftsmen, and flattened the city. The Golden Horde never really recovered. Tribute resumed. Rebellion was punished with fire, and screams mostly screams. They moved so fast you'd think they had Wi-Fi and Uber Eats in the 13th century. These continued to wield influence, but the days of thunderous cavalry and imperial domination were over. In 1502, the Crimean Khanate under Mengli Jireh finished off the rump state of the Golden Horde. They could be on horseback, fluent in archery, and looking for tribute. The Horde under Johnny Beg besieged the city, but hit a snag when their own troops started dying of the plague. The Russians adopted many Horde tactics, horse archery, steppe cavalry maneuvers, even the war cry Ura, which some historians trace to the Mongol word yor, meaning strike. Also borrowed the Mongol style of centralized despotism, which, as it turns out, was easier to maintain if your enemies were dead or too scared to write petitions, not one to waste an opportunity. The Horde allegedly catapulted the infected corpses over the walls, an early form of biological warfare that might have helped spread the Black Death into Europe. The Russian prince, Dmitry Donskoy, sensing weakness, rallied various Rus principalities against a Mongol warlord named Mamai, who was trying to act like a Khan without technically being one. Their blend of mobility, organization, terror, and adaptability set a standard for Eurasian warfare. But their story is also a cautionary tale. Internal division, overextension, and the occasional genocidal genius like Timur can bring even the most feared empires to their knees. On a foggy September day, the two forces clashed on the Don River. Dmitry pulled off a narrow but symbolic victory. It didn't end Mongol dominance, but it gave the Russians their first real taste of unity and victory. You had your 10 guys, and if one of them broke formation or fled, guess what? All 10 paid the price. No HR department here. The Mongols wiped them out with a speed that makes you wonder if the Bulgars even got to put on pants. Next came the Rus principalities, which were a fractured mess of rival princes and feudal squabbling. The Mongols responded to this dysfunction with what you might call extreme unification therapy. The city of Ryazan was erased. Vladimir was torched. Then came Kyiv, a grand city of its time, leveled in 1240 after a brutal siege. The city was reduced from a thriving metropolis to a smoking pile of regrets and crushed dreams. It was equality through shared fear. Their cavalry, primarily composed of lightly armored horse-mounted archers, was fast, mobile, and devastating. Think of them as the medieval version of a drone strike, except with arrows, screaming, and a slightly higher manure budget. Tactics were a mix of terrifying precision and psychological warfare. One of their earliest and most brutal campaigns was Batu Khan's Western invasion from 1236 to 1242. First stop, the Volga Bulgars, Kyiv was such a thorough massacre. Archaeologists have had trouble determining where the marketplace ended and the cemetery began. After steamrolling Eastern Europe, Batu was preparing to roll into Vienna and probably Paris for dessert. But news of the great Khan Ogedei's death pulled him back east. In time, the Golden Horde set up shop in a new capital, Sarai, on the Volga River. Then there was the siege of Kaffa, a Genoese-controlled port on the Crimean Peninsula. Forget arrows and swords. Sometimes the deadliest weapon is a flying dead guy with the plague. And you thought modern dating was toxic. As time passed, the Horde faced internal conflict and pushback from the very vassals they had once crushed. Enter the Battle of Kulikovo in 1380. Mamai learned the hard way that bringing an overworked, underpaid medieval army to a Russian fight is like bringing a ladle to a bear mauling. But the Horde wasn't done yet. In 1382, Mamai's rival, Tokhtomish, retaliated and burned Moscow to the ground, massacring tens of thousands. The 1390s marked the beginning of the end. The rising power of Tamerlane, the ambitious warlord of the Timurid Empire, clashed with the Horde's ambitions. Timur didn't just destroy their capital, he walked in, stole their lunch, slapped their grandmother, and took the bathroom key on the way out. The following century saw the fragmentation of the Horde into smaller khanates, Kazan, Crimea, Astrakhan, and Sibir. Yet their military legacy lived on. The Mongols taught their enemies how to rule with Tehran. The Russians took notes, like it was a TED Talk. The Golden Horde was not just a regional menace, it was a force of military evolution. So next time you see a horde of angry people online, just remember it could be worse.